All right, part two. Let's dimension this thing. All right, so let's see.
That's true.
Stockholm syndrome is chicken.
Yeah.
You just continue to live with the abuser, huh? Because it's like the bad that you know is better than the unknown kind of scenario, huh? Yeah. All right. So let's see here. Where are we at? Got my drawing up. Just got to dimension it. Got my dimension layer on. Everything should be programmed correct. Here we go. I got to go into my viewport though and decide where I'm going to do this. So I don't think I've actually set this up in viewports yet. And so I don't know if anybody has, I haven't actually determined what scale I'm going to be at here. So I'm on my A3 size sheet, which is where I think I ended up with this anyway. A3 size. This is 1:1. I think I drew this at least a half scale when I did mine. I think I did this at a half scale. And it's fun. I almost can probably, I'll see how this goes. And then if I have to move that auxiliary one, I will. So I don't know how yours may need different viewports now. And that's not the end of the world. Yeah, because this actually is a good viewport, but I don't think when I actually I think I had three different viewports when I did mine the first time around. So either way, maybe I think I ended up at a half scale, and so I'll just go in this one and dimension it all, and then I'll decide if I need to add some extra viewports. But we're cut them up as I organize my dimensions. But I'll get in here and start dimensioning. So I'm just gonna start with my overalls. Overall height, width, depth. So I'm gonna kind of proceed where I'm gonna put every dimension that I can get on the top and front that is like, true to length and easy to understood. I think I'm going to put it there. And then I'll hold off on my auxiliary view for mostly the primary stuff that was distorted in these two views, and I'll pick up their dimensioning over here. So I'm not going to jump to, yeah. So I think I'm gonna stick with a lot of dimensions here and maybe fewer dimensions over here, but I can move them around later too. So overall, sure, I'll just put the overall width here, which is going to be like here to here, I think. And the overall height, this is the place to get that as well. So I can put that either side, really. It doesn't, I'll pull it out here to the left right now. I know that that necessarily isn't in between views, but it's kind of like closer here rather than pulling it maybe clear across. This isn't wrong either, though. I could go either. If I do this, remember, I got to tuck my, I call out a lot of people for remembering when you do stuff like this to tuck your extension lines back to the object edge, even if it's just a small object that that you're overlapping. But yeah, so I'll just drop this here mostly for clarity's sake and like less extension line. I think I'm gonna have some dimensions in here. So maybe I don't want that line to go across initially, but there's height and width. And depth, I think I'm gonna put it up here. I feel like these are good reference dimensions because of the nature of this thing being tipped on an angle, and really you're dimensioning to a very edge here. This to me, there might be more critical dimensions that I'm going to hold here than these, just based off the nature of this part. But it's okay. You'll see me if you see some of my examples and I've got parentheses around it, just know that I've kind of identified that as this reference, nice to know dimension, but not necessarily a critical hold. I think I repeatedly say that overall dimensions sometimes become kind of reference dimensions because this one's another one that's kind of from radius to radius perpendicular here, right? And yeah, that's what it is. It's, not a great control point to pull those from, but at least I'm capturing their overall. And so that's definitely height, width, and depth. So I can move on now to the individual parts, and I just break this down piece by piece. So I think of the base plate that has the bend in it as kind of one part, but then I even subdivide that in my brain, and it's got kind of like two different features. It's kind of like it's got some form going this way that's nice and flat against the bottom surface, and then it's bent up this way. So I can almost break this part down into like two different features, really. And because even this part that's bent and comes up, it gets even more complicated in this area where we've got the radiuses coming together, which is the whole reason why we needed that auxiliary view. So it's pretty complicated, part just in itself. And so I'm just looking at it. I'm not even looking at the cylinder part or this gusset yet. I'm just looking at this part. What you find is when you start to dimension these, you get dimensions that are doing double duties later down the road, and that's fine. You just have to kind of, you recognize that, oh, that dimension is going to do multiple duties for me, kind of. It's going to apply to multiple parts. So this one here, like I might want to know, I think of size, and then location. The location for this part's going to kind of be, well, I'm going to locate it by it's going to sit on this base, and then I'm going to say that this crosshair is kind of critical. So that's kind of functioning as my location in space. So I just need to worry about its size, and I'm just worried about this the side that's flat against the base right here. So its size, it definitely has a thickness here. So let's talk about, yeah, I'm gonna need the thickness of this thing. There's one. I'm gonna need the which is the height of that in that, I guess. And then I'm gonna need the depth of that part too. So, it's kind of a rectangular part with a radius on the edge. So I think if it needs like a height, width, and or like a I don't know what I think. It still needs its height, width, and depth of just this part. So, well, I say, well, it's this height here, and in this particular point, it's this kind of width where it has this bend come in. So I feel like this is a critical dimension to have. I feel like that's funny that that's slightly askewed. Like I've grabbed some weird point. Let me read. I can just see that these should vertically line up and they don't. So I've actually got a weird alignment of this dimension, I think. So if I pull this dimension again from here to here, this should be a straighter. Yeah, that looks better, I think. So at least I can get those two dimensions for this particular right there. And then I just need its depth, and that's going to be in the upper view here. So I'm going to jump up here and say, well, this is the depth from here to here. So now I feel like I've kind of addressed the three dimensions that would have. Other than now, when I get up to here, I see it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's got more going on than just a simple rectangle. So, and I say, well, it has this size associated with it as well, a radius here, right? So it's like this radius dimension. Remember, radiuses are for partial circles, diameters are for full circles. And so it's just a good little disclaimer. But that this is a kind of a size associated with that base part. It has a radius of this. I'll just pull this out here. Can't see it anywhere else. And then I think that's probably about it. I've got it at least I'm covering it from right here, right? I'm covering the shape of it from here to here. And so I feel like I can kind of move on from it, other than I need to maybe locate it. And so I feel like there's maybe one helpful location here is that when I snap a dimension like this 80, it's kind of in relation to nothing. It's just in relation to itself. It's from like front to back is what I'm saying there. So this is where like location comes into effect. If I did say that this is going to be a control point here, then I could locate that to that control. And so this is where I move into the location brain. I've sized it, now I'm locating it. And locating it, I think, is just going to be in maybe in one direction. This is where I think it's a little confusing to students is when to locate and when you feel like location is already established. I just feel like this is kind of like not to a control is why I feel like I need to establish a little more I need to establish a location for this because it's just from side to edge. It could be if I was calling the front surface a control, then this is probably sufficient. Or if I'm calling the back surface a controlled surface, then this is going to be a sufficient dimension because it's kind of acting as size and location. But I'm going to just based off the nature of the shape of this part, I'm kind of like not using the front surface as my best control, and I'm going to use this center as my best control. And so I'm going to pull this one here as kind of a location dimension. So
Did you just give that big thing a radius for it?
maybe right here
Just give
or
the-
this.
Give the art, or like you already have.
I already have it because I definitely need that. And I feel like that's more of a size than it is a location though. But it is kind of functioning as both. I agree with you. Like it's 40 out from this point out to here, right? And so somebody could say maybe I could get rid of both of these and leave just this, right? And that might be true. Um, I feel like the 80 is doing a little bit more than just the arc itself, though. It's actually carrying a surface width through here. And so maybe I'm doing some redundancy here, but I'm kind of thinking of it as beyond just the radius. It has uh, some flat depth to it across here. And then I'm kind of establishing where that flat depth is in relation to this control. So I think of this as my maze now that I'm saying, from this center point, I go over 40, and then from there I come back this way. And I'm kind of always working off of the center here. So I follow this as a little maze, but and this is where I think a lot of people get confused and dimensions get missed, but maybe if I put because I put that size on there, someone is able to figure it out type of a scenario. I kind of feel like it's kind of necessary, but it's definitely in the weeds of dimensioning. Like it's a location dimension for the 80 depth. And yeah, yeah. And so now I'm moving on from that. I feel like now I'm kind of moving on to the next to the upper bent part of this as kind of its own little feature and size. I think because it changes I don't know if I included this one on mine, but so if I'm looking at this part now from the bend up, I may want some dimensions here for this part, like length and width dimensions. And so you could just put an angle on here. Like I feel like that's more of a reference dimension, and it's nice to know. That's the relationship of this to that is an angular bent up. ASME would like us to maybe use this minimally, but I still use it. And we're talking about from here to here, right? The relationship of these two parts is 60 degrees. I'm just going to say that, yeah, I'm going to drop that in there, but I'm going to call it like a reference dimension probably. And I'm going to see if I can like XY coordinate point this like ASME would like. And so when I look at this, the points that I might need to establish are, well, I've already got this one. Like this is kind of a point of this. They are in common, this surface and this surface where they come together. I've already kind of established its coordinate point is 123 off from this edge, which isn't the best. Maybe I would say, in fact, and maybe in order to better define that, maybe I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to say maybe this one actually is better pulled from right here because this is a better control than that outside radius edge. So now if I'm thinking of this part here, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to start controlling stuff from the right side. I think I'm going to start controlling stuff from here. And so I'm going to say this plate now is from here to here. And now that really helps me with this plate as well, that this point is established from that control, which leads me a little bit to say, I have to kind of backstep a little bit and say, well, then maybe I need to know from here to here then. These two are kind of working together, but now they're from a better control than that outside surface from this bore. So now I feel like I've kind of covered this again. Okay, cool. I've got that overall length. It's kind of, but it's being controlled from here. Okay. And now I'm back to looking at this part again and saying, well, what about this point? I need to know where it is, maybe in relation to that control too. And this is like this is point to point almost coordinates. So when I look at something that's leaning over in my orientation, I might think of like looking at its points to points and deciding if I've got like an X and Y dimension for those points to points that could be figured out. And so I'm saying I don't have any dimensions pulled here other than a 60 degree, except for I have this overall. But it's not based off of any control like this. So I'm going to say I want this one to this one as well. I may have missed that little placement there, but I think I want to know this one to this one. I'm going to move these down a little bit, and make some space for myself because these eventually will come down, I think. Well, I might have some more that's going in there, so I'm not going to go crazy low. I'm going to, so I'm definitely going to. So I'm gonna leave. I'm already thinking ahead a little bit there, but I'm still focused on this plate. And I think I'm gonna do some more dimensioning because what I would like to know is yeah, so if I come back and think about this one point, I've got it now. I've got a dimension from here to there. And then what do I have it in the Y direction? Well, it's right there. It's off this other control right here. It's 20 up and it's 83.45 over. That's where that point is. This point is 95 over from here. And how far is it up? It doesn't have to be up. It's on the base. It's on the other controlled surface. So that one's kind of located. And then I've got this one up here that I haven't got anything to. And of course, I've got all the radius features going on that I can't really tell here. So I'm not going to dimension to those. They get a little confusing. So I feel like I'm going to pull this dimension to the control like this. And the last one I need is maybe this one. That one I have as an overall, but they're not pulling from the same control. So you can say I'm just starting to stack up dimensions, pulling off this. I'm starting, and what somebody that knows how to read prints is, they would look at that and say like, this must be a datum, this is a control. And so you start to see that, like when I can see that saturated on your guys' drawings, when I know that you're pulling from the same point, I'm like, they're starting to establish datums, controls. So that's good. I mean, you should start to see these like stack ups of dimensions coming from, you know, sometimes the best part features or datums to pull dimensions from. So I'm going to pull this one too. So this one over to here is one that is a unique, it's not a double dimension at all. Now I've got this huge stack up going that somebody's going to recognize that is a critical axis. And once I pull that, you would say, well, what about this one? It's not. Do I need to pull it back to the other? No, because I've already not. Um, well, maybe. Yeah, maybe I do. I would say the same thing. I might say, well, this one I want to actually pull back to here now and base everything from this like center.
Yeah, but
Then I've got this double dimension, but they're different. They're actually they seem like they're double dimensions, but they're actually different features. So even though the dimension is the same, just then you go back and you tell yourself, you know, is it the same? Have I dimensioned the same feature? Then it's a double, then it's a true double dimension. And these just happen to be the same dimension, but different feature points from the same datum. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at dude. Yeah, sorry. You guys got me. You guys got me. Sorry. I was looking at
Measuring to different corners.
I'm gonna edit out that my video. No. I get it. You guys are totally right. That is a true double dimension. Love it. So what I'm gonna say is I'm gonna leave this one here, but I'm gonna call it a reference dimension. So this one to me is because I still like it as an overall. I'm not going to, but I don't want it to be something that's like controlled. I'm going to control this part uh, based off of this center and not based off this. So what this becomes to me then is a reference dimension, which we just put in parentheses. And there isn't a quick dimension style to add this. I did do some forum searching because I couldn't remember. Yeah, everybody's like, how is reference dimension not like one of the dimension styles that I can choose? So I actually have to click in and put parentheses around it. That just is telling someone that's a nice to know dimension, but don't control this part from that dimension. Still gives me a reference, still gives me a quick measurement if I had this part laying around that I could quickly identify, oh, that one should be about 182.5. You know, if I had several of these parts that were made that were just slightly different, this is a great dimension to be able to quickly put a tape on something and measure it to say, that's the one, that one. It's not the one that's 0.164. It's a different part. So bam, I kind of have this. But I still got to go this is only in the X direction. And and it's pretty complicated to go point to point to figure that out. Like, yeah, and I've still got to go in the Y direction now on these points. I think so. I'm going to come back to these points and say like, well, here's this is I've already got its kind of Y direction. It's 20. This one's sitting on the base. Let me just jump up to these ones and say, oh, I've got one there and it's based off the base. I love that one. I'm going to keep it. It's actually a nice control, potentially a control because it's off the bottom datum. And the only one I'm lacking is this one. And so I'm going to pull it from bottom to up here, right? I'm going to pull it like this. And I'm going to pull it linearly like this. It gets to be kind of cumbersome and it looks kind of busy because that's kind of like XY point to point coordinate like dimensioning. Yeah.
I want to double check where you pulled that because I have a 92.27 and an 82.27.
Right here. 82.27. Oh, you can see that I can tell that I'm low, right? Low. Hey, that's good. Good. 82.27. Love it. That's good. Actually, that's a good check. Thanks. Killer. But that's just in this profile. I'm still working on this part and defining its, its geometry and its size. I'm still kind of thinking size. I've kind of done size and location here. If you think of these are kind of doing double duty, size and locating, X and Y locating from a datum. So I've kind of like blurred the lines of size and locating when I've done that. The only thing that's missing here a little bit is this 20 like across here. And so let me just talk this. Some industries might say, while ASME likes this, some industries might be like, this looks busy and complicated, and I just want to know what this like. And we have these aligned dimensions. So I'm going to leave my ASME kind of XY coordinate, but just know that in some industries, they may just prefer you to drop this dimension on here an aligned fashion. They would be kind of breaking away from what ASME would tell them to do, but this would be where in industry somebody might prefer this dimension. So just you have to kind of stay fluid whenever you work wherever, and you might be like, well, I know ASME would do this, but what do we do? And you know, like when you're in Rome, you do what Romans do or whatever, right? So you have to kind of like know the rules, but know that hey, I'm not gonna if this company isn't following hard ASME and they would rather have this dimension, I'm gonna go ahead and plop this on my print. And the one that they might actually want, if this was an actual bent part, and this is into the weeds a little bit about manufacturing, is they'd probably want to know the ID dimension of this actually. They may want to know where to measure that part. And so when the press brake comes down and hits that spot, that it's starting from this dimension. Usually when you're bending stuff, the operator is looking at the inside of the bend, not the outside of the bend when you're running that equipment. But that's a in the weeds thing for manufacturing. But more of the story is you have to be a little fluid and a little bit a little bit willing to compromise your standards. Not all standards, but some. You got to compromise. So I'm going to leave mine like this though, and then I'm just going to go to the top view and decide what I need to dimension for kind of its size up top. So size up top gets kind of complicated and distorted. But what I've got is maybe some dimensions here. Um, and it's like, well, how do I start dimensioning this to what? I've got one, but it's from like edge to edge, and that's its overall depth there. But what else do I need to dimension? Well, I might need to dimension the radiuses out, and I kind of could do that here. But when I came to my top view and I thought if I'm going to dimension anything, I'm going to pull this control like further over. I'm going to pull this control through the part. And I'm going to show that there's this horizontal alignment from this control through this part. This is now symmetrical over a center line. And I feel like if I'm going to dimension anything here, I'm going to dimension it from this center line here and not necessarily from the this outermost radius on the back or front side. So all I've had to do is pull this, controlled plane through my part. And now I've got like, you could actually go to town dimensioning here now, right? Like I could say, well, what do I need to know? Well, I need to know how far over, and I'm not thinking holes here. So let me back up. I haven't started to think about the features of size of the holes. I'm just thinking of the outer radius here. And they are concentric to the hole. So this dimension is going to do double duty. I'm going to pull this from here to here. And really, but what I'm actually thinking of is that's kind of where the outer radius of the part starts because I'm thinking of I haven't defined its shape yet. And that shape kind of, the shape contour of it starts right there, 45 over from center. And I'm going to do that over here so I can't assume that somebody thinks that it's totally symmetrical unless I had a note that said symmetrical through center from front to back or something. And those notes are tricky because then you're under dimensioning stuff and people have to read your notes. And so sometimes the dimension on the thing is better than a note in a list. But you've always got your bases covered if it is on the note on the list because you can just say read your freaking notes, right? But you can do them a favor and do some dimensioning there. So I've got that to that. I could add them between each other, right? Like it's still not double dimensioning to do. Sometimes you'll see me do this that I might say, well, yeah, it's 45 over from that to that. And then it's also 90 over. Like this seems like it's redundant dimensioning. And sometimes when the math is easy, it does look very redundant. But if the math is trickier, then this is not super redundant and it's actually helpful dimension. And it's not a double dimension. So unless I do it twice, then it is a double dimension. But just that one right there. So I've kind of like what else am I thinking of? I haven't been able to like put a radius on that so I can tell people well, that's why we have an auxiliary view, is because this is not going to be a great place to call out what the radius is. It's going to be better to look at call it a radius where it looks like its true form and not distorted. So I'm going to come over here and say, well, this is going to work as I'm still trying to define this profile here. So I'm going to say the outer radius here has this radius right here. Maybe I'll put these over here. I don't know. I can put these, yeah, out of the way a little bit. And there's two of those. So I'm going to say there's, two of those radiuses that apply to that dimension. So now I'm covering both of those. I've kind of like sized them there. Now the location of them is helpful that it's this 45 and over and 45 over. So I've got to use both of those views to place that radius. 90 I've covered, but 90 I could pop in here, but because it's nice, it's the true length here, I'm just going to leave it in the top view rather than drop it in here. And then it's got that complicated feature where they transition back to the 80 millimeter versus where, where it comes out to this ear. So I need to include that radius, this thing here. I can drop this in anywhere that'll work good. Sure. That'll kind of show me a weird radius. That's good. And there's two of those, so I'm gonna drop in a 2x by those as well. It's a 2x radius. Maybe I'll drop this a little low and keep my leader line just a little bit more on the angle side, like that, maybe. You would think I might need to locate this too. Like there's the center of it actually there, but and some places might need you to locate that, like out in space, or have some coordinate point for it. So I'm not going to do that here. It's funny that I'll cut some corners sometimes, but it does get complicated to think of, well, where's that location? I mean, I know its size, but what's its location? Well, its location is also tangent to tangent. But yeah, these are things that in some industries you may have to be more particular than even when I'm being there. But I'm going to call those size. I'm going to call them located here. It is arguable that this is 10 over to there, and I could notate that here. I think it would be confusing, and technically the way I drew it, I lined up the centers, so it's not really drawn exactly right here. But that's one reason why I'm gonna have a hard time locating it. It's because the center is actually 10 over, and it kind of floats out here in this weird space. Yeah, it's kind of weird. What else with it? What else have I missed? Hmm. As far as just the outer surface of that. This one here. Yeah, I haven't even thought about it as a feature yet, though. So I'm thinking I'm just thinking these two. All I've analyzed this with is just the base, essentially just this part. I haven't even started analyzing those other parts yet. So I'm gonna just say, okay, I think I've sized that. I think I'm ready to move on to its features. So now I don't even move on from this part until I've like looked at what else it has. Well, it has holes in it. It has a hole through here and it has a hole through here. So I'm going to say, well, I gotta size and locate those. So the sizing is not going to be done here. I'd have to size it to hidden lines and I'd have to size it to a distorted view of it. So I'm going to size the hole that's in here right here. So I say I'm going to come up here with a diameter and size the features of this part. They call these things features of size, a hole. It's funny. We can't just call it a hole. We're going to call it a feature of size because it's a feature on this particular part here. There's two of those, right? So I might need to put a 2x in front of those. That's its size. What's its location? Well, its location is concentric to the ear, so I've definitely located it like here, this way. Off of a nice control even. So there's its location. What about in the other direction? That's only located in one direction, and generally things need to be located in two directions. So locate it in the other direction. Well, I could locate it here. It would be an angular dimension here. Or an aligned dimension, sorry. Like I'd have to pull this to there because I have a true length of it there. It'd be 25. But I think I chose to put mine right here for this. It's clear here. It's establishing a new datum though a little bit. So this is where I'm blurring the line a little bit on. Technically, I've only really got 1, 2, 3 datums going for me potentially. Well, I would say I've got like one, and it's kind of blurs the line of this as being an axis versus this being planes, maybe. So there's already potentially, if you count them up, maybe you maybe count 1, 2, 3, 4. It's arguable that these 3 and 4 might still be this. And this would maybe be establishing 5 or 4 if I'm going to do this dimension. So the nature of this part might be a little bit more complicated. But I'm going to say, well, from this edge in its flat position to this here, I want to know this dimension here. And so here's a little trick to this because your dimensions don't like to snap like that, maybe out of alignment. This should be 25 is what it should have there. I didn't see it yet. So what I'll do is I'll go over here to my dimension layer, which is where we dimension, and I'll do a dimension line, which is like what the extension lines end up becoming. And I'll just come in here and draw my own little extension line that's like orthographically aligned with my view, whatever degree that is. I happen to have a snap because I think we're on a 30 degree. we're on a nice to use orthographic projection plane actually. And so I can actually use my snap here because you'll notice when you're doing align dimensions on something that's out of like not an X and Y orientation that it's harder to snap that and move that dimension around. So I just do this as a cheater. Now I can go from here and totally perpendicular to here, which maybe my part is drawn incorrectly. Probably is. I probably need to like troubleshoot this thing because I don't know what you guys are getting 25. I'm getting 5 hundredths off actually. I don't know what you guys are getting here.
I draw that.
My projection, well, I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to troubleshoot this a little bit. I'm 25 here. Sorry, in this is what it should be. It should be 25 down because it's concentric to the radius, which is a radius of 25. So I think I've got a problem with my view here that I'm gonna have to like trace down like why what I'm slightly out of alignment maybe somehow. Could be how I'm rotated here. I don't know, like I do a little bit of searching. Like here's my center, maybe. I'm trying to find center of this to over here. So I think it's probably could be my line because I'm actually drawn correctly. This was my little needle. I'm looking for a needle in a haystack, right? I'm looking for like why is this dimension out of alignment? Should be 25. Yeah, I think this thing maybe is not in perfect orthographic alignment because, you know, so maybe I'll snap this dimension here momentarily. That's from center to top edge here. Oh, I think my crosshair maybe is slightly not centered, potentially. I thought I snapped that and then rotated it, right? Um, but so I'm coming in here and I'm like shift selecting, hold down shift, right click, and I'm picking center here so I can really isolate that my grip is going to be the center of the circle to here. That's pulling true. You know, the problem with doing this is I'll beat you up over that extension line being over, and then you can't pull this into alignment, right? Like this doesn't work. That's the difficulty of this. So it's like I'm going to establish this, and then I'm going to establish like I don't know. I'm going to trace over that with my little dimension line. I could have been that I pulled a little bit low too on my first. There's when you get up in here, it's a little complicated where these arcs maybe are coming, and maybe I pulled a point that was intersecting low. This is what I really want. This is going to get kind of out of whack for a minute. I think my center line is just a little bit goofy. I'm gonna like target that point and come out here perpendicular, maybe. It's a hard one to get if with my geometry. I'm gonna get rid of this one real quick for a minute so that I think where it is intersecting is causing me some problems. I really want to hit this point here. So I might just draw myself a quick center line that's maybe a little bit more precise here. From center in the projection plane this way. Let me go this way. Aha. This one will be better. This is it. So it was just I was having issues with just the way my center line was. I marked that as a center. I'm gonna delete this one too because I placed it and then I rotated it and then maybe I rotated it slightly not in true. Anyway, yeah, it was definitely causing like a different intersection point here to grab, and so I just got it out of my business there, and then I'm gonna pull this one through now to here. I'm gonna follow the ASME standard here. I'm gonna pull this beyond that 6 millimeter. Here, I've got the same thing going on where I want to pull this 6 millimeter and let it overlap that extension line. I've got this locked in a little bit better to there. I still am using this as what I'm actually snapping to perpendicular. So I'm going to pull this back to either the arrow or the end of the where the extension line should end. I don't want that to overlap longer than what the the setting of the dimension style is. Yeah, that's kind of particular, but maybe I'm going to drop this thing in between. And then eventually this is going to maybe be spaced away. But yeah, I finally got it there. I just need to put in a couple more lines here that would be center out here like this, maybe. Yeah, for me, I'm just having to rebuild my center marks a little bit. I'm going to pull this through all though, like this, at least to here, then beyond 6. Yeah, I should be able to copy and paste that over now. Copy that thing from center. Maybe I had to zoom in a little bit like that. Okay. I like my set. Maybe I like this better. Just seemed to help me pull that dimension because I'm just locating the holes. I'm still having that now. I finally located the holes. Good. Size and located in one direction with a new datum kind of. So, I might have to come back and analyze that later down the road and be like, is that the best way or should I figure out a better way? Would it be better if I pop this one in here? Either way, it's pulling off a different datum. It would be, maybe it would be arguable that I should pull off from here then to there. And it is like in the event that I did work in an industry where they like these aligned dimensions, this one might be a better controlled location for that. Is from that like corner datum that's based off the base. Like it's argued this may be better. So because the base is a nice flat surface, this would be the edge of that base. So I would have to put a line dimensioning on my prints and for our class we're just kind of avoiding it. But even if you put them, I wouldn't I wouldn't throw them away because I like the idea of saying in some places align dimensions might be your better go-to. So my gut coming into teaching and not like really done a deep dive into ASME, and I can't say I've done a huge deep dive, but it definitely has informed me to come back and say, what in my life have I watched drafters break the rules of, and it's definitely that. Like a lot of places don't follow ASME 100%. So so my old drawing, sometimes I'm like, well, this is how I would have normally seen it in industry. And I'm like, oh, if I'm really analyzing it to standard, yeah, they're breaking standards. So, okay. And then, and now I'm finally ready to move on, I think. Well, kind of. I'm ready to move on to this hole that would be a feature of size in this plate if this is a through hole. So maybe I will come back to that where they are a shared relationship of what's going on through this part here. So I feel like whatever I do to the dimension this thing with its inner bore and its outer bore is going to apply here as long as I might put the word through or through all. So I'm going to come back and say I think I'm going to cover this feature of size in this plate, the hole, along with this one. So let's just move into this one then. I'm going to move into this territory of what is this one's size and its location. Okay, well, let's do its size first. I can get its rectangular size right here, at least the outer diameter. So I think I'm going to move over here to dimension its diameter in the rectangular view. And that only applies if it's a circular part. If it's a radius part, I don't put its diameter in its rectangular view. Its radius would be called out in its view where it looks as a radius. But if it's, and so I caught a few people on prints doing that where we're, and that's an easy thing to confuse. Like, why wouldn't I do the diameter of a radius where it appears like this? Like this 80, should I put a diameter sign in this? No, we're talking about a radius of 40 is the better description of the outer profile, not a diameter of 80. 80 is kind of the depth across the rectangular surfaces. But so that's easy to confuse, I think, when it's a radius part that I would want to put the radius, not a diameter in its rectangular view. So diameters definitely are whole circles, and the best place to do them is if they're in the rectangular view, or if not, in where they appear as a circle. So in this case, I've got a rectangular view of it, so I'm going to take it. I just got to remember to add the diameter sign in front of it. Yeah. And then eventually I'm gonna have to space all these out and clean them up, but I'm not gonna worry too much yet here. So I've got this diameter. Yes, I've got some crisscrossing going on. That's okay. That's its diameter. So I've sized it in one direction. It also has a height in this particular view. So I am going to dimension that from the base here, like this. And if I wanted to include this one, it's definitely like it's like its own shape here. I could include this one. It's just that to me, when I look at this relationship of these three, um, one of these is going to become a reference, I think. And I just don't, we won't know what it is. We won't. So it's okay to leave all three of these. This is kind of chain dimensioning, which is okay. Like I call it like true chain dimensioning, probably when you've stacked up like 4 or 5 dimensions off of each other. That's definitely true chain dimensioning. 1 or 2 dimensions like chained off each other is not, I wouldn't classify it as chain dimensioning. And what would keep it from being chain dimensioning is if I said that this one is going to be the controlled surface. It can't be any more than 45. And so this one could potentially say, in that situation, if 45 was the most critical dimension, then this one would become a reference dimension like this. It'd be a nice to know. And I can even stack these up. So what I mean by chaining them, it's okay if like these are kind of 2 intermediate dimensions. And it might be okay to do this, like a lineup like this. And don't be afraid to do this on your prints because it actually cleans up your drawings. You're able to sometimes put intermediate dimensions lined up with each other in kind of the chain dimensioning look, but not true chain dimensioning, especially if I do this, because now this is going to be this is the critical part size here. And this is just kind of reference information that it's about 25 millimeter. This one is critical. Maybe this one's critical. And maybe I would move it out here or something just to get them, I don't know, so they work together. Eventually I need to clean these up. But what I mean is like, don't be afraid to do this just because it cleans up things. It'll let you stack stuff in just a little bit more compact and tighter. Anyway, okay. That was another thing that I kind of pointed out on some people's drawings. Like, don't be afraid to compact your dimensions by chaining. Like I'm going to chain these two together probably for sure. Okay. So that's definitely like I say that that's sized, right? I think it's like that diameter and it's potentially either 40, it's this or this. If 25 was more critical, I'd drop the parentheses and put them around this. Okay. And then located wise, well, location, we can kind of say, well, that's where this weird dimension comes in here that I'm going to say, I'm going to locate it right here off this same control. That's a location off of that datum. It's this far over, and then it's a 65 diameter. And then I might need to locate it here. Guess what? I already got it. There it is. It's 40, maybe, well, kind of. It's definitely on center plane here. So I think I don't have to locate it in this direction here. I don't think so. I've somewhat kind of located it just with that one dimension that if I came up here, it's that far over. It's that diameter. We're located. It's on the center this way. It's got an inner bore though, part of it. So I need to size the inner bore, and I can't do that here. It's hidden line work. So I'm going to size it up top on the top view as a diameter. So this one is definitely a diameter, right? And there's just one of those, 35 through. This is the one that I might add through all though, through. So it wasn't clear on the assignment sheet if it was. I've drawn it as a through all, so I'm going to notate it as a through all. Someone may not have drawn that. If I can get into the dimension, there it goes. And I'll tag that on the end. Maybe I'll even just put it on the next line down. Through all. I say all because it's multiple parts, kind of. Like it could be multiple parts. If it's all just, I only put through all if there's like maybe more than one. If it was just through this one cylinder feature, I could just say through. Through all definitely means there's multiple parts it's going through. So through all. And then its location is also being handled kind of by the same, yeah, kind of. You might argue to me that maybe I need to locate it like this, and it wouldn't be wrong. It gets pretty saturated. Like to say, well, if you did the OD diameter by that, why wouldn't you do the ID diameter? And it's definitely not wrong to say, well, yeah, it could be located off this datum that I'm pulling things from like this. Maybe that's a little bit redundant, and some places would definitely kind of drop that and be like, we get it, it's concentric to those two, so I don't need to do this. It starts to beg the reason, or I mean, it starts to show like next semester when we do GD&T that the hieroglyphics that we can apply to our dimensions will sometimes help take care of those. Like that's a little ambiguous. Like, why did you do it to the outer diameter but not the inner diameter? Well, eventually we're going to end up having some hieroglyphics take care of like some symbology, take care of that and apply the symbol of concentric. And that will help take away some of that vagueness of, anyway. You think these things are just obvious, but you have to remember that we never want things to just be obvious. We in the aerospace industry, we have to define it. In the automotive industry, we have to define it. So anyway, okay. I'm going to move on though. I actually dropped that dimension, but I just want to bring up that argument and beat it to death. So there we go. That I think I've covered this. I think I've covered that part. Now let's move on to the gusset. It's the last one. And yes, what Sky said a while ago was that I need to dimension it right here, and I'm going to dimension off center here. So I'm going to say, well, in order to place that gusset in this view, I'm going to say it's 8 off center, and then I'm going to have this like 16 overall width. Kind of like a keyway in a little bit there. I'm just basing its size and location. 16 is really the size. The location is 8 inch off or 8 millimeters off center, not inches, but 8 mil. Yes, 8. I think we'll say 8. And I'm gonna pull this one out in a way because I'm definitely getting busy here. And then I'll clean this up in a little bit more. I'm just cleaning up just a little bit now. Yeah.
Might it not be a little bit better for clarity's sake to have the gasket dimensions to be put on the auxiliary view?
You could. They could go here, right? And I would do the same thing where I'd probably apply. I'm on the center line layer right now. So if you did that, you would just want to add a center line to your part here. And that's not a bad idea anyway to have this. If you're going to dimension to it though, base it off the center line here for sure. And so I'd have to add this, and you could do that. The only reason why I'm not is because I've got their true linear relationship here, and so these are true lengths, and maybe you would argue, well, you're getting pretty busy over here, and yeah, maybe I'm getting on the busy side of things, but I can still probably fit it with a little bit of a little bit of cleanup work here. Yeah, but there would be no reason why you couldn't do it here. Yeah, you could. Yep. You could even put the 45s and the 90s in over here, and then your auxiliary view is yeah. I think what I'm doing is I'm going to put dimensions over on my auxiliary view if I feel like I've saturated my other two views, and that's my only reason. And I'm definitely reserving my auxiliary view for what is truly needing to be dimensioned over there, which is that radius in that hole specifically, and the two little radiuses in that hole. So I'm definitely kind of restricting myself to just like what has to go over there, and then I'll push stuff over there if I just don't have room for it on my other views. So that's my thought process a little bit. I feel like I've still got room here, so I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to clean these up later anyway, so I think it's going to tuck in nice and tight eventually here. But I don't have, now I need to go back and look at the gusset in the other view though and decide, do I have it point to point located? And I probably pretty close do have it. I know there's this ambiguous thing here. I might leave this too. Like, it's arguable though that I could need it because you need the overall length to not be this. You need it to be this in order to make this part. And so I definitely don't have this on my initial view when I pulled it up on the end of the last time's video, but so maybe this is a little bit complicated, but let's see here. I want to analyze that gusset from point to point. And so maybe I'll start at this point here. Have I truly like got this measurement for maybe a control over to this side? I would say no, I don't. This particular one is actually the diameter of that. This is something that was pointed out to me that I'd missed initially on my drawing, is that really this thing goes over clear to here. And so it could be that I need this dimension. And it's a super like busy little, and I got to get it pulled right there. This is why engineers don't want to be drafters, probably. They're just like, you deal with that mess. Because that's coming from there now to that point. I don't really have its height though either. So really I need to know that point. So because what I'm looking at is this shape and deciding if I have like an XY coordinate kind of for every point on this shape. And that's one. And now I need to know the other one. And I don't think I have these on my original drawing actually, because I didn't draw it like that. So, but technically you would need to know this little height here potentially. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Could you turn off the screen share for a second?
Yeah, I can. I sure can. Oh yeah. Let me get off.
Formula One race.
That's a super close relationship to that, and that's a really fine detail that I don't think I caught before. But that's one point. The other point is going to be here. It's going to be 20 out like this. If I'm just going to work clockwise around this thing now. So that's kind of its x, y. If I go down to this point, what's its x, y? Well, here's y is 20 and x would be the same. So they're in alignment here. It'd be 31.5. So I've kind of, this dimension's doing double duty. It's doing that one and that one.
It's something to think about is that line is actually offset from that center line.
Yeah. So maybe,
You'll be able to measure from the center of the circle if the right to be measuring a radius should be longer than that. Or the graphic.
yeah, that's true, huh?
So like that.
The way I'm definitely seeing is that I need that much like true length material to actually make the part though. If I only dimension that part back to here where the center of the radius is, I wouldn't have a large enough part to put the radius in. So technically if I need to make that part, I need to at least establish its like overall like size, and then I can like trim it to fit. If I don't, yeah, if I've only accounted for it to be this is definitely in the weeds. If only if accounted for the part to be at this length, I don't have material to do this little.
Well,
Yes, correct. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So because what we're talking about is this difference from here to here, right? Like this little amount of material. In order to make this part, you need this material to be on the part so that you can then put this radius in it to make it fit into this cylinder shaped part. If you actually only size this part to right here, you end up with this like part gap here, which might be insignificant, but it could be fairly significant. So, you just stuff it with glue or whatever. Yeah. No, I don't know. It's not ideal. You like parts to fit up like part to part. And if you molded it, you would want it to mold all in. If it was a 3D printed part, we'd want that to be uniform. But yeah, this is in the weeds a little bit there, but I'm just going to keep walking it around. What I've done is XY coordinates on those points. And then I'm going to say, okay, yeah. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to move around to this one. And I'm going to say, I've already located that one. It's that. And it's this. Excellent. So I'm going to move on to the next point. This one up here. Well, I've located it. It's this. It's kind of located in size, really. It's that, and it's this one on that point. Killer. So I don't have to do any more dimensioning there. And then I'm back around to the point I started with, maybe. So really, it's just adding a few more dimensions, and I've kind of covered the, yeah, covered it. But I got to clean it all up. And then I got to pull up my other one and decide what I missed or what not. But this is just me walking through that. I can pull up my other one and see, but I know it doesn't have the details. Let me see. I'll pull it up real quick. This one. I did add that dimension. That one already catches my. I'm just looking at I got my 8, my 16, my 45s, my overall. I'm missing 90 here because it's a little bit redundant and this is easy math. So whether I added the 90 or didn't, it's probably it's probably fine. And I've got that one through. Maybe through all is better. I like that better. I've got my radius here. I've got 40, 80. I definitely feel like I should add these. I think I've missed that. I should control that length, unless I've already controlled it down here. And I do believe I added the 40 here. It could be arguable. Maybe it's clear to be 40 from here and then 32 and a half working together there. I have both. Now I do have both those dimensions. They're just right here, right? I've added them here. Let me click off my grid here. I've got them, but maybe what I've done before and put them over here is a little bit clearer. So I like that idea. And then I've pretty much included only the same things over there. But if you included the gusset measurements, that's fine. Leave them there. I've got this going on, similarly thought through there. Got that. Definitely don't have the details correct there. So we've corrected that a little bit. It's made it more complicated, but we've got it covered. I've got that as a reference. Yeah.
What about the thickness of the diagonal?
Right here.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, I think it would be another aligned dimension, and I think it would fall into the. I'm kind of getting it when I base these two. Like technically, this is figure outable based on these XY coordinate points. It's going to establish a 20 millimeter thickness there. So I'm going to leave it off because these dimensions are going to cover that. But
logic, you need 60 then?
No, technically you don't. That's why I've got it as a reference for sure. Yes, I feel like, yeah, in some industries, I would drop these X and Y's and put in actual lengths and they would be aligned dimensions on here. And that would be okay for a lot of industries. So that's where I come in to say, like, just be flexible on that and know that this is maybe X and Y is like ASME and but other industries might break that. Yeah, I agree. And I didn't I guess I didn't add this as a reference yet, but I intended to add that as a reference. So I'm gonna go back to a half scale because I didn't realize I bumped that. And I'm going to dive back in. But this one, like my other print, is I would say, yeah, if I've got the X and Y's truly, this is maybe is just good, nice to know information. And it's a less critical whole than would be the actual dimensions of the parts. Yeah. And then when somebody reviews their drawing, they'll be like, get rid of all that and just put on the other. And I'd be like, okay, I will. Yep, yep, yep. It's like no battle in it whatsoever. It's like whatever makes it sometimes it's just whatever makes sense. And I do agree. I actually agree with my industry experiences that this becomes a little bit more complicated and a little bit uglier in some ways. And I do kind of like the aligned dimensioning on parts. So I actually prefer some of the aligned dimensioning concepts as a personal note. But I'm kind of showing you both in some ways, or at least talking through both. So now I just need to clean it up. And I do think that, yeah, one of the things I liked better on mine was that I do think that these looked a little cleaner here to say this was out to here 40. These are ones that are easy to forget to pull back to the object edge, and they should pull back pretty clean like that. So, and then one more, I think. Yeah, I think I did end up saying I like this one too. And I'll pull it back to the object edge as well. So what I'm going to do now is, and then I'm just going to delete them off here. I don't want double dimensions, get rid of them. Your views are talking to each other that for that very reason. So you can kind of clean this up. And I think eventually I'm going to actually, because I've got this more, some additional complicated stuff going on here, I might pull some of these dimensions down. Um, these probably will stack up and fit good actually in between. And so I can't keep them, but if I feel like I need to, um, might try to make that. I don't know if that's clear or less clear if I pop that out to the side. Probably a little clear if I pop it out to this side, and it's going to be closer to. Anyway, that's a little, I like that. I'm going to like this better as being the most intermediate dimension. These I've got to break around that dimension. So what I'm going to do is going to keep cleaning this up. I got to clean this up, maybe cut some lines through dimensions, cut some extension lines through dimension lines. I've got to tuck everything at. You're at half scale, so remember this. You will have to kind of adjust your spacing for your half scale. So remember, like I'm at a half scale on my actual drawing out here. So if I put this at, I think I'm at a half scale. Is that what I am? Yeah, just keep this in mind. You got to do like, so like, let's say 20. Let me use an easy dimension that's not going to cause me some grief here. Um, maybe the, I don't know, which one's a nice clean. Let's just go with this one that I'm working on here. Like this one, technically, like we would say is 10 millimeters away. And then I jump out and I look at this and at a half scale, I don't think this is going to remain at 10, right? I'm going to need to double that amount to actually be at 10 if I actually measure this distance. It's at 5 millimeters. Distance is 10. Oh, well, I don't know. Is this right? Yeah, maybe I don't have to think. Maybe I don't have to overthink this. Maybe this will annotate for me. Just watch yourself. If your spacings don't crunch, it could be that the scale factor is, and maybe it's because I'm locked. I don't know. Maybe if I unlock this for a minute. But what I've just done,
The bare minimum.
what, too many dimensions? This is a pretty complicated part, actually. So it has to, these are the basic dimensions for it. Yeah, we can get even more complicated if we have to really control stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean, like, yes, I still have to dimension everything. So I can't just like stop dimensioning stuff if there's still stuff.
Busy, so you guys are just
Figure it out
Don't
after.
dimension.
No. That's that. I understand what you're saying though, but yeah, you'll just find that that we're not even close to being too busy yet, actually. So yeah, totally. And then if I didn't have room for, I mean, I haven't established my room, but what I guess my moral of my story is here, just watch that your spacing isn't getting like crowded, especially if you apply, like I did kind of figure out that I was going to be at a half inch or half scale before I started dimensioning. And so my scale factor didn't change my dimension spacing, but just watch yourself if you end up like not picking a good scale factor first, and then you adjust that scale factor. You may have to go back in and respace stuff. And so just watch the stuff doesn't get like super overcrowded if you flex your scale. Anyway, just watch yourself because I've had to do that a few times. Come back in and be like, I picked the wrong scale. I dimension everything. Now I got to go back in and adjust the spacing at the right scale. And so do yourself a double check. I usually try to determine the scale before I really jump into dimensioning. So the sheet scale that is, and that's what I did here. But anyway. So I've got a bunch of cleanup to do, and I think I'm gonna stop this video and then but I will clean all this up and tuck it in nice. I mean, I can keep doing it on video, but it's essentially going to be tucked all in, kind of like this. This is like I've added a few more dimensions here, but this is one that I've actually tucked in and kind of like I've cut through and cleaned it up. And the way I drew it looks like the way I drew it originally. I had to actually do separate viewports. And if that's the case, I guess the last thing I'll show you is that this is just one method. There's lots of methods to do this, but if you end up having like a view that you drew crash like this, or I should say the viewport's going to catch other like dimensions in it and you don't want that, well, then I just make a flipping copy of this. I come in here, and I think I had mentioned this yesterday, but here's just one like hack technique. Like I'll come in here and make a copy of my visible layer. So I'm going to copy this visible, control copy, make a copy of my visible layer, because technically that's kind of like visible line work. And I'm just going to make a copy, but then I just say like, I don't know, I give it some like identifier that's like clipped. It's clipped, maybe PP, clipped by viewport. And I'll try to spell things right, generally. So I've got this like visible object stuff that's clipped by a viewport. And so I'm going to make sure that what I do is I make that so it doesn't print for sure. I don't want it to plot. And then what I do is I might come into this view that's clashing with my other views. Like say I like these and I don't want this thing in my viewports. Well, I'm going to come in here and like mass select this view. And I'm going to push it to that new viewport that I just created. It's going to be clipped by viewport. So I'm going to be able just to turn it off. However, before I do that, let me back up once. I'm going to make a copy of that first. So let me first do a copy of this like projected view. Perfect. Copy it. In order to do this, I'm going to keep it in orthographic alignment, though. I want to be able to maintain my orthographic alignment, but I need it in a new viewport where my dimensions won't clash. Technically, this is me keeping in orthographic alignment. I could turn on that construction layer if I needed to, but I've just made a copy of that. Then this one ends up being the one that doesn't show up in my viewport anymore, so I don't need the dimensions on it. It was actually my main based construction thing, right? So all this stuff was just for dimensioning. Now I feel like I can move it to a clipped by viewport layer or something. And then I can come in here and say, I'm going to turn that thing off. It's just one method to get, and then now this viewport still works back here. And essentially I'm going to be able to like put a new viewport around that. But when I do that, I've got to then draw some orthographic alignments. Like I got to make a new construction layer. I still want that view to be in orthographic alignment from where it was taken. Out here somewhere, it can be out here further and cleaned up in its own viewport. So do that. And then, yeah, so maybe I'll keep with that sentiment here and say, if I'm going to do that, then this thing is probably just going to be a little bit moved over. It's way oversized for what information I'm showing, so I can dial it in a little bit here. This viewport is only these couple of views here, and then on the sheet they might actually live a little bit clear over here more, maybe down just a little bit. I don't know, somewhere around here. I'm going to say that's where that lives, and then I would make my new construction layer. And I didn't make a copy here. Let me see. Copy that. Copy. So it looks like I'm out to about construction layer 5 now at this point. That's all right. That's pretty normal. We're actually still dealing with pretty simple parts, but I just usually draw these on their own little layer, and I'll turn that on for a minute and I'll go to that layer. And then what I'm looking for is a projection to line up that other. So I'll just draw it way out here. I make these usually blatantly not part of the drawing here. but it lives out here somewhere. Then I'm going to add my viewport. Here it is, rectangular viewport. It's going to be in this area somewhere. And then it's going to be on the wrong layer always with my viewports. Do I put them on the wrong layer initially? Then I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click into there and zoom in on that particular part to make sure I scale it the same size, right? It should be at a 1/2 scale. And I'll lock that in real quick. And then I've got to move it into orthographic alignment. So I've got to move that viewport. Move. Viewport. First, I got to get out of the viewport. Escape. Click, double click, triple click. This thing, I'm going to move it by this thing that's definitely going to be part of the orthographic alignment. Maybe here at first. It's a little too close, so just move it again. I move it by the whole viewport. Viewport, but with this little grip maybe. Slide it along that axis a little further away. Something like that. Yeah, then I'm clearing that. So that's just a quick way to snap that thing in. Still got room for my revision history to grow a little bit. The whole thing could be moved down a little bit, and this gets tedious, right? This is your life in CAD. Is cleaning up these drawings. So if I move that affected that. I should have moved them all together, but I think actually maybe I'm okay. Yeah. No, that thing didn't move with me. I didn't move that. That's why I was like, how did I not? Let me back that up. Leave it there. What I wanted to do is move everything. Move it all. Move this. Move these lines as well. And move this viewport. All maybe by this. Dragging it down like that. Then I just have room more for my revision history to grow a little bit more. I could still tuck it in a little bit, but that's pretty close, right? That's close. Turn that thing off. I haven't cleaned this all up yet, but this is always do your preview. Make sure you're not clipping anything out of your viewport. This thing all needs cleaned up. I'm not even there yet, but we're close. This thing's fully dimensioned. I'm going to stop this video. Cancel it. Stop share. Of course, you didn't see that because I wasn't projecting to your screen, but you get the gist of it.